Hello everyone and welcome to BTech Modding. In case you missed the video from last week, I am Alessandro, aka Explore Modding, and I'm the new modding lead for BTech. This means I'm going to show you my project via Project Logs series on this channel. This is the first episode of Project Mirai, a Casemod based on the Corsair 7000D and made to promote the launch of the case. As you can see here, I already completed it, so it didn't feel right just hiding it until the end of the series, because I already shared it on my social media pages. The timing for this project didn't quite line up with my debut on BTech, but I still wanted to show you this one as my first series because it's just the most recent mod that I completed. So no surprise factor on this one, but I'll make sure to give you guys a lot of information and take you through the whole process of making this possible. Today we'll have a presentation of this project where I'll go through the source of inspiration and the theme, as well as how I approached the planning phase, like 3D models and all those preliminary steps. At first glance, this might seem like a very simple mod just because the exteriors are basically stock, since I wanted to keep the case recognizable. But the internals were actually completely redesigned to follow the theme. I'm a big fan of Japan in general, and one of the main symbols of Japanese culture are torii gates, which are portals that symbolize the entrance into a sacred place. So this is where I took my inspiration from, kinda. I didn't stop at the basic torii gates, because some time ago I discovered this amazing and unique torii gate found in Jintoki Inari Shrine in Kanoya, which is made out of aqua green glass and chromed metal details and joints. This thing immediately gave me sci-fi vibes, and sci-fi and futuristic design are one of my main inspiration when it comes to modding, so it just had to happen sooner or later. In fact, the name of this project, Mirai, is the Japanese word for future. First phase of planning was finding out what materials to use for this project, especially to mimic the glass found in the original torii gate. Of course, I wouldn't have been able to work with glass, so I stick to acrylic. Problem here is that I needed some kind of thick acrylic, ideally 15 millimeters, and it just seems like it didn't exist in some sort of aqua green or light blue shade. So I decided to use 10 millimeters clear acrylic and sandwich it with 4 millimeters light blue frosted acrylic. I used the frosted one because I couldn't find a clear one with the right color I wanted. As for structural parts and details, I used 2, 5 and 8 millimeters aluminum. When it came to planning the actual build, I had 3 goals: make it unique, as always, valorize the theme, and leave enough of the stock case to keep it recognizable, since it was a promotional build for the case. I'm not super experienced with Fusion 360 and 3D modeling in general yet, so remodeling the case itself from scratch just wasn't an option here. What I did was take measurements of the interiors, draw the top, bottom and front panel and place them in the model accordingly, and design everything from there. The exterior wasn't going to get touched anyway, so no need to model that as well. The torii gates play a huge role in the aesthetic of this build, so it was the first part I designed after the bottom, top and front panels. And it was a real challenge because the torii gate is symmetric, it's specular from side to side, and the case is not. So getting the proportions right between the two elements was quite hard. Plus I had to design them a way that didn't interfere with the internal hardware. I eventually got it to work by splitting the torii gate in 2 pieces and showing half of it on each side. This allowed me to keep it open towards the back of the case and be able to show the hardware properly. As I was already planning to scrap basically the entire interiors of the case, I had to design the new parts, being careful to achieve a structurally sound assembly, and the two Torii gates weren't enough for that. So I came up with a motherboard tray made out of 15mm clear acrylic that goes from the front to the back. So now I had both vertical and horizontal fixing points on the case, effectively from the Torii gates and the motherboard tray. The 7000D supports an awful amount of radiator space, but the more radiator space you use, the harder it gets to achieve a good result when it comes to uniqueness and cleanliness when looking at design focused build, because it just limits your option. What I often do in my project is finding symmetric layout for the radiators, of course when there are two of them. So it's either back and front or top and bottom most of the time. It just looks better to me. This time I went with a top and bottom layout, which fits perfectly with the motherboard tray that goes from the front to the back. And I used two 420mm radiators. A vertical mounted GPU was also mandatory, since the motherboard tray actually sits at the very center of the case. So I implemented a couple of simple mounting brackets on the plates at the back, and the same was done for the PSU on the other side. I didn't consider making an integrated I/O plate, as you've often seen on this channel, because one, my machine is definitely not capable of that accuracy and reliability, and two, I find pleasure in making extreme mods that still allow for hardware upgrades, even when they're just show builds and they likely never see all their components, because at the end of the day they're still computers, and upgradability is one key feature of them. Just my 2 cents anyway. This doesn't imply that I'll never take on this kind of challenge in the future, especially when I'll get the new CNC up and running. So this was just a quick introduction to the key elements of the build. There will be 3 more episodes where I'm going more in depth with features, fabrication and so on. Next episode will focus on adapting the case to the new custom parts, and also the making of the first structural panels. And you certainly don't want to miss out on the next episodes, so make sure to subscribe and reach us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, builds.gg and Discord. You will also find our merchandise shop, where you'll be able to grab some swag for you and support the channel at the same time. All links in the description below. That said, thank you guys for watching and see you next week.